I'm joined once again by Tyson Chartier, who is going to be cornering Rob Font coming up here in a couple weeks against Sergio Pettis on the UFC on Fox 31 card, but he is a manager and coach. Tyson, what's going on, man? How are you?
Not much, man. Just I'm in Vegas right now, getting ready for the tough finale on Friday night, and we got Rob and Calvin out here with me.
First off, I mean, we've had you on here before, but I don't think I've really talked a bit about your background and everything. I mean, you used to be a professional fighter, and then you made that transition to coaching and managing. When did that take place? When did that all come together?
I think I was an active fighter from 2008 to 2012, but a large portion of my pro career, I was also coaching. So I was like, running the fight practices, cornering all the other fighters, and running my own camps, and then just slowly made the transition. A few ways. Being realistic with my skill set, I was never going to go to the UFC or anything, so I just did it as experience for fun, a bucket list thing, and then little by little transitioned into just next thing I know I was cornering all the guys, and transitioned into coaching, and then at the same time I was building top game management, and it just sort of happened organically.
Yeah, and who are some of the clients that you have? You talked about Calvin Cater, Rob Font. Who are some of the other clients that people might be familiar with?
Kyle Bokniak, Mike Rodriguez, he's also on the Milwaukee card. Kyle's the week before in Toronto. Andre Sukumtath, he's got a pretty big following. Devin Powell just fought in Argentina. Maurice Green, he's been on this season of The Ultimate Fighter. Pam Sorensen just fought for the Invicta title. And then pretty much most of the prospects at CES, Nate Andrews, Carlos Candelario, Justin Sumter, Tim Karen, a lot of those guys, I managed most of those guys based out of New England. But yeah, I mean, we got a deep squad right now. I'm excited about where we're at.
Yeah, it's and there's been a lot of success there too.
I can't forget Greg Rubello.
Yes, of course. And is Greg retired? What's the deal there? Because I know he hinted about potentially coming back.
He's coming back from his second retirement. He retires more than anyone else I've met. But no, he's I think he was a little hasty after that last fight. Just the manner that he lost, he was just bummed. It was his third time losing on that same cage in the Ultimate Fighter gym. And he was just really frustrated. He kind of let out a tweet probably earlier than he wanted to. But right away he's like, no, I can't go out like that. I want to I want to go out on a win. So his plan right now is to do one more, ideally on the January card for CES, and kind of go out on a win. But I always say, like, oh, what if you look really good in that fight? Are you really going to be able to retire off a really good win? So we'll see where that goes. But we'll see what happens with him in January, and then we'll take it from there.
How do you determine if you want to rep someone? Like, what do you look for in a fighter in terms of having them being part of top game management?
For a big part, it's just character. Like, I don't want to deal with bad people. I want to, when I call you or I text you or you text you call me and that name comes up on the phone, I want it to be like an excited thing, not like, oh, what does he want now, or what does she want now, or I don't want to have to be policing your social media to make sure you're not being like delinquent or something like that. I don't want to be chasing you down for, paperwork or something like that, just because I can't trust you to be a professional. So really it comes to character first. You can be a bad fighter if you have good character. I've managed some fighters I know are never going to go to the UFC, but they're good people and I want to be on their team, But if you're a great fighter and you're just not a good person, you don't vibe with our group, because you've interviewed a lot of my fighters, and for the most part they're all really good people. So that's really what you look for. And then after that, you're just looking like, what do their coaches say about them? Do they look like a prospect? Have I seen them fight? Do they carry themselves in a professional manner? And then do they vibe well with the rest of our group? Because we try to be like a tight, cohesive unit and almost like a family atmosphere. So I want them to be able to, joke around with my, my current clients and be, really be a contributing member of the team.
Most managers are just that, management, that's it. But you also coach as well, and I know you do a lot of game planning as well. This is something you and I have talked about. How do you go about, so like, for example, Rob's fight coming up with Sergio. Take me through, some of the process as far as getting him prepared for Sergio Pettis.
The first thing we do is we start breaking. Once we get the bout agreement, then I start breaking down video. So I watch the video a bunch of times. Generally, I'll go through like every fight 2 or 3 times without the volume on, because I don't want to get any bias. I try to watch it by myself. I don't watch it with the fighters just because I don't want their input. I just want to see like what I feel, what's my gut say, and then I start to look for tendencies, and then I go through about watch it with the volume on. But I take notes the whole time, and then I have a template that we use, and I'll start filling it out. We're mostly looking for like strengths, weaknesses, looking for tendencies, and then knowing Rob as a fighter, it's like, okay, like what can we exploit? What's our skill set match up against their skill set, and where do we really have the advantages? What portion of the sandbox can we play in where I really think that even if we're subpar that day, we'll still have an advantage. And then we try to put that together, put it in writing. I get sign off from some of the other coaches, and obviously from Rob. And then from there, we build a camp. We say, okay, here's what we're going to do for this camp. It changes slightly. We're always at Lausanne on Saturdays, but depending on the camp, we might be there on Mondays and Wednesdays as well. So, from there, then I'll give assignments to the other coaches, like the jiu-jitsu coach, you working on this, the boxing coaches, hey, this is going to be our stance for this fight. So like, let's hit mitts that way. The wrestling coaches, Rob goes up to Maine a few days a week and wrestles. I'm on the phone with those guys and showing them the game plan and showing them things I want him to work on, better takedowns versus this opponent versus worse takedowns. And then obviously defensively, we have to work on. And then just using that to build the camp. And it's a moving document, depending on how Rob's looking in camp, we can tweak things and adjust accordingly. And then obviously then there's a plan B, like a contingency plan. If what we thought we could do isn't working, then we have a fallback. But it's been pretty successful for us. We started doing it in the Matt Schnell fight because it was a really short notice fight, like 9 days. Didn't have a lot of time to prepare, and we've had a lot of success with it. It's really done good with helping us have something in writing on paper that can pull all the coaches who aren't training at the same gyms and the training partners, pull them all together and get them on the same page.
How's Rob looking ahead of this fight? You mentioned he's in Vegas right now. How do you keep him, sort of on schedule when he is traveling and going to different places?
Man, Rob's an example for all the young fighters to look up to because he's really like self-disciplined. He's driven. I don't have to beg him to get to sessions. He goes. He generally shows up on time. He's self-motivated. Like he knows what's on the line. Like he knows it's a big fight. He knows it's a big name. We're in Sergio's hometown. It's on Fox. The Road to the Octagon did a feature on him. He knows there's a lot of eyes on this fight. It's not a matter of keeping him on task. It's more or less like, I was talking to one of his wrestling coaches, Quinn, who's here with us, and we were just talking about stuff we want to work on tonight at tonight's session. Things I didn't see in Saturday sparring that, all right, doesn't mean he's not good at it, but like I didn't see it a lot, so I want to work on this tonight and like make sure it's fresh and just little tweaks there, stuff like that.
How much of an advantage do you think it is that Rob has been a regular bantamweight in the division and Sergio's moving up from 125?
And there's pros and cons to that. Obviously, when Rob fought Matt Schnell, he was like, he was a little quicker than I thought, but he felt like a little boy, So obviously there's pros and cons when guys move up. He's not cutting as much weight, but Rob always has a good weight cut. So I think mentally it's an advantage. Sergio knows he's coming up. He's fighting a legit bigger bantamweight. And, he hasn't been able to finish guys a lot at 25. And, we have 5 finishes at 35 against, some top tier guys. And we've been in there with some of the best 35ers there is. So I think mentally there's a big a size and power advantage that comes with being a regular bantamweight versus a flyweight coming up. But, I guess we'll see on the 15th.
And, I guess, where do you feel like a win would put Rob here? Because the one thing with Pettis is he does have that last name. It is pretty notable. It's in Milwaukee. I would imagine, even though he hasn't fought in the division, he was pretty high up there in flyweight. I imagine that would sort of propel him back up in the division.
Yeah, we're sitting at number 11 right now. So beating, top 5 25er, I would hope it'd bump us into the top 10. It's a big win. But if not, like, the most important thing is getting the win and then, looking at who we can fight in the top 10 for our next fight. I think, if anything, the number next to our name may change or may not, depending on how we look. But I think a win over him definitely warrants us, like, getting a top 10 fight in our next fight against a bantamweight that's already ranked.
Let's talk about a couple of your other clients. You mentioned Kyle Bochniak, who I spoke to yesterday, and I know he was up at TriStar training a bit over there. How did you coordinate everything as far as, help? Because you talked to the coaches, but obviously TriStar's in Montreal, so was that a little bit more difficult? How did you touch base with that camp?
So with Kyle, I'm just strictly his manager. So I don't have anything to do with coaching him. He'll cross-train with Rob and Calvin a little bit. But for the most part, he's got a really good coach in John Clark at Broadway Jiu-Jitsu in South Boston. And me and John were talking earlier in the camp of a couple different ideas, maybe sending him out to Minnesota or some other places. We had a couple guys that I had used for camps for Rob that would have been really good sparring partners for this. But it's just those guys had fights coming up in Glory, and the timing didn't necessarily work out with their coaching staff and stuff. So John Clark set that up, and he got them up there. He went out with him this week and trained up there with Kyle. He liked what he saw. they came back, and then Kyle went back up and trained again. He said he really loved it. He got to train with some other guys in his division. He said he had a lot of fun, and he's excited to go out there next week.
And one name I want to bring up, and this was kind of going to be another question of mine, is, who's someone we should be keeping an eye on that's on the roster? And one guy I actually wanted to bring up, Mitch Raposo. This guy, I interviewed him a little while back. I've seen some footage on him. He looks like the real deal, and it seems like he might be going pro fairly soon. Any news on him?
Yeah, so I'm working with Mike Povey at Cage Titans on his pro debut for January. He's a beast, man. I bring him in to do a lot of camps with Font, and he's a 25er, so now we're going to try to maybe put a little size on him and transition him to 35. If that truly is what the UFC is looking to do, is get rid of that division, then he we'll fill him out and bring him up to 35. If they keep the 25, then he'll fit right in there. But he's that new generation of fighters that are coming up that, he wrestled in high school, but he's not a wrestler. He's been training since he was 12 in jiu-jitsu and MMA, and, turned amateur, has the amateur fight right when he turned 18, rattled off like 6 fights, and 6-0 amateur, turning pro now. Man, it's impressive to see his skill set for someone who's only 20 years old and is about to turn pro. And I've said this to Rob, so it's no shade at him, but he's skill set wise in terms of being well rounded. He's right where Rob was when Rob made it to the UFC. So you're just seeing how fast the talent pool of these young fighters is coming through. So I'm excited to see what he can do as a pro. And then another guy to keep their eye on, obviously Carlos Candelario. A lot of people are maybe sleeping on him. They're pulling him out of some local rankings just because he's been active, but he beat Candido on the Contender Series 2 summers ago. They invited him right back, but unfortunately he tore his ACL in that fight. He got, surgery, and now he's been cleared to go again. So it's just a matter of, booking him the right fight. And same thing with him. Do we fill him out at 35? Are they going to keep 25? And, where do we go? But he's 7-0, beat some legit guys. And, if he could go at 35 right now in the UFC and beat most of the guys. And I'm very confident in saying that. So, and, you see his social media. He's always, he works now. He's training one day, and then the next day he's excited about fighting. So, I think he's just a guy. We just need to get him a fight, and once we get him a fight, he's all in. So I think I'm excited about his potential.
And we're excited with what's next with Rob and all the rest of your clients, Tyson. Again, I appreciate the time, man. Just remind people where they can get a hold of Top Game Management on social media. Anything you want to plug at all, man, the floor is yours.
Yeah, it's Tyson_Chartier on Instagram. I try to post about fighters as much as I can. And then there's Top Game Management on Instagram. Ed Cap, our right-hand man. He keeps everything up to date on there. So any fight announcements, any interviews that the guys do, he's always real good about posting on there. And, just tune in next, obviously this weekend, The Ultimate Fighter. Then next Saturday, watch The Road to the Octagon. They'll do a feature on Font. And then that night, watch Kyle. But don't forget, Friday night, obviously, is LFA, Bobby Lee, too. So we got Bobby Lee, and then Saturday, and then the week after that, watch Milwaukee. We got Mike Rodriguez and Rob Font going at it. So we're excited.